is a special presentation of HBO Sports. There are few states in America with Ohio's glittering sports heritage. The first professional baseball team was the Cincinnati Reds, organized in 1869. Canton, Ohio was the birthplace of the National Football League in 1920 and is the site of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Ohio boasts the only major league pitcher to hurl back-to-back no-hitters and the only collegiate to win the Heisman Trophy in successive years. Who will ever forget the night Buster Douglas of Columbus KO'd the seemingly invincible Mike Tyson to win the heavyweight crown? And Ohio even gave America its first hot dog, long a staple at sporting events.
Hello, I'm Len Dawson, your host for Great Moments in Ohio Sports. For the next 40 minutes or so, we'll relive some of the wonderful moments that helped contribute to that long sports heritage. As a native of Alliance, I know firsthand what a great state Ohio is when it comes to sports. At the end of the program, you can match wits with Ohio's sports writers and broadcasters who've chosen the 10 greatest moments in Ohio sports history. Let's begin with the Roaring Twenties. They began with the granting of voting rights for women and ended with Black Tuesday, the most disastrous collapse in Wall Street history.
On August 16, 1920, Cleveland shortstop Ray Chapman was struck in the head by a pitch from Carl Mays in New York. He died the next day. It was the only death in Major League Baseball history. The Indians shook off that traumatic adversity and won the pennant by 2 games over the White Sox. Cleveland, led by player-manager Tris Speaker, split the first 4 games of the World Series with Brooklyn. Then, in the first inning of Game 5, the Tribe's Elmer Smith whacked the first grand slam in series history. In the 4th, Jim Bagby drilled a 3-run homer, the first round tripper by a pitcher in the Fall Classic. And finally, in the 5th, Cleveland's second baseman Bill Wamsgans made the only unassisted triple play in World Series history. The Indians would go on to win their first World Championship. In Columbus, in the early fall of 1920, Ohio State's diehard fans pondered the future of the Buckeyes without Charles Chick Harley, who almost single-handedly turned state from a drab also-ran in the Big Ten into a national powerhouse. Even without Harley, the 1920 Buckeyes, coached by John Wilkes, were perfect during the regular season, thanks to a last-second touchdown that gave them a 7-0 victory over Illinois in the final game of the season. Winning the Big Ten championship earned the Bucks their first date in the Rose Bowl, but they wound up being thrashed by California 28-0. One thing was certain in the wake of the Harley years and Wilkes' success as Buckeyes coach. They had outgrown rickety old Ohio Field, which held a maximum standing room crowd of just over 16,000. But in 1922, Ohio Stadium, with 66,000 seats, was dedicated on the banks of the Olentangy River. The cost, $1.5 million.
The 1930s began with America in a deep depression and the promise of a New Deal by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. When the decade ended, Nazi Germany's forces were marching across Europe, and a Gallup poll indicated that 58% of Americans believed that the U.S. would be drawn into the war. There were only 2 big-time amateur football teams in Ohio during the mid and late 1930s. One, of course, was Ohio State. The other was Massillon High School, located in Stark County, the cradle of pro football. In 1932, a former Massillon High quarterback named Paul Brown, 2 years out of Miami University in Oxford, returned home to coach the Tigers, who had been down on their luck. Over a 60-game span covering 6 years, Massillon lost only once. During that time, they averaged nearly 40 points a game and gave up just under 3.
With a record like that, Brown had been approached about a number of college coaching positions, but there was only one job he wanted: Ohio State. While Brown made headlines in football, the 22-year-old son of an Alabama sharecropper and the grandson of slaves was about to put an indelible mark on Ohio and world sports history. His name was Jesse Owens. His family moved to Cleveland when he was 9. Owens ran his first race at age 13 and soon became a nationally known sprinter at East Technical High School. He went on to Ohio State University And as a sophomore in 1935, he did the impossible. In a 45-minute span, he shattered 5 world records and tied another at the Big Ten Championships, all while suffering from severe back pain. The next year, Owens took the world by storm, winning 4 gold medals in the 1936 Berlin Summer Olympics. He won the 100 and 200-meter dashes, the broad jump, and led off for the victorious 400-meter relay team, which set a new world record. German dictator Adolf Hitler, who had wanted the Berlin Games to be a showcase for the Nazi myth of white Aryan supremacy, refused to congratulate any of the black American winners, including Owens. 1936 also marked the arrival of Bob Feller, the flame-throwing Iowa farm boy. That year, he tied the modern Major League single-game strikeout record with 16, then broke it a week later, fanning 17. 2 years later, he did it again, whipping 18 Detroit Tigers on the way to topping the majors with 240. On June 11th, 1938, Reds rookie Johnny Vandermeer pitched a no-hit, no-run game against the Boston Braves in Cincinnati. 4 days later, in the first-ever night game at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, Vandermeer duplicated the feat with a second straight no-hitter. No pitcher before or since has pitched back-to-back no-hitters. The following year, 1939, the Reds won the National League pennant, their first in 20 years. They faced the New York Yankees, led by Joe DiMaggio, but were no match for the Bronx Bombers, who swept the series in 4 straight.
The 1940s, a decade of war and peace. Roosevelt was elected to an unprecedented 3rd and 4th term. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and the U.S. was at war on 2 fronts. With victory finally secured, FDR dead, and Harry Truman in command, the Iron Curtain descended on Eastern Europe.
Opening day, 1940. Bob Feller on the mound in Chicago, and he did what no other pitcher had ever done, toss a no-hitter in the opener. It was the first of Feller's 3 no-hitters. Meanwhile, at the other end of the state, the Cincinnati Reds won their 2nd straight pennant. In the World Series, the Tigers and Reds split the first 4 games. But in Game 5, Hank Greenberg's home run and 4 RBIs sparked the Tigers to an 8-0 win, and the Reds had their backs to the wall. But in Game 6, Bucky Walters pitched a 5-hit shutout to knot the series. Finally, in Game 7 at Crosley Field, the Reds scored twice in the 7th to squeeze out a 2-1 victory and their first World Series title in more than 2 decades. The following summer, Joltin' Joe DiMaggio came to Cleveland in mid-July with the hottest bat in baseball history. On July 16th, he hit safely in his 56th straight game. The next day, DiMaggio tried for number 57 with Al Smith on the mound. On his first trip to the plate, he smashed the ball down the third base line, but Ken Keltner robbed him of a sure hit with a backhand stab and perfect throw. Keltner robbed him again in the 7th with a similar play. In the 8th inning with the bases loaded, DiMaggio laced a sharp grounder to Lou Boudreau at short, who handled a wicket hop and started a streak-ending double play. Indians ace Bob Feller posted a 25-12 record in 1941. Then, like many other major leaguers, he turned in his baseball uniform for the military variety. He would miss 4 full seasons. 32-year-old Paul Brown finally got his wish in 1941, when Ohio State made him head coach. He led the Bucks to a record of 6 wins, a loss, and a tie, that being a 20-20 deadlock with Michigan. In 1942, Ohio State won 9 of 10 games, including a 21-7 pounding of Michigan, capturing the Big Ten title and its first national championship.
People around Ohio began talking about a dynasty, but there was a war to be won. The following fall, the draft and various Army regulations hit Ohio State like a bomb and depleted its ranks. Brown even said he'd consider the season a success if he could field a team. He did, but it finished 3-6, and Paul Brown went off to war himself as head coach of the Great Lakes Naval Training Center team. No one knew it at the time, but the all-too-short Paul Brown era at Ohio State was over.
Backfield coach Carol Widows, a Brown assistant at Massillon, was named acting coach, and his team produced Ohio State's first unbeaten, untied team since the Chick Harley days of 1916. back Les Horvath, a dental school student and star of the 1942 national championship team, led the Buckeyes to a 9-0 record. An unofficial civilian national championship in the Big Ten crown. The Associated Press awarded Army the national title. Horvath played quarterback in the T formation, tailback in the single wing, and was a star in the defensive secondary. His all-around performance earned him the Heisman Trophy as the nation's top college player, the first ever by an Ohio State Gritter. By mid-August of 1945, World War II was history, and Americans began returning to civilian life. Paul Brown decided he would not return to Columbus. Instead, he accepted an offer to coach a brand new team in a brand new league, the All-America Conference. At the time Brown signed a 5-year contract in 1944, no one knew when the war would end or the league would start play. But Brown was busy lining up players for the team that would become known as the Cleveland Browns. One of those players was Otto Graham, to whom Brown promised $250 a month until the end of the war. Cleveland already had a professional football team, the Rams. In 1945, they hosted the Washington Redskins in the NFL championship game at Municipal Stadium. Led by Bob Waterfield's 2 touchdown passes, the Rams won 15-14. But the Rams were having financial problems, and a month later, in January of 1946, they moved to Los Angeles. That cleared the way for the Browns, who were just too good for the All-America Conference. Before the AAC merged with the NFL in 1950, the Browns ran up a record of 52, 4, and 3, winning all 4 championships. But nothing generated more excitement in the 40s than the 1948 Cleveland Indians, which had been purchased in 1946 by Bill Veeck, an entrepreneur and showman extraordinaire. The Indians and Boston Red Sox finished the regular season with identical 96 and 58 records. It was playoff time in Boston, 1 game for a trip to the World Series. Rookie Gene Bearden, a 20-game winner, pitched a 5-hitter to lead the Tribe to an 8-3 victory. Bearden had only 1 day's rest. In the World Series, Cleveland defeated another Boston team, the Braves, and won its first world title in 28 years. 1948 also produced great moments for Ohioans in the first post-war Olympic Games in London, England. Harrison Dillard, of Baldwin Wallace College, the world's top hurdler, did not qualify for that event in the Olympics. But in a remarkable performance, Dillard took the gold in the 100-meter dash in a photo finish with teammate H.W. Newell. His time was 10.3 seconds. Ohio State's Mal Whitfield also won gold in London, coming from behind to win the 800 meters with a new Olympic record time of 1:49.02. And finally, a memorable decade of sports in the 40s ended as Ohio State shared the Big Ten football crown with Michigan. The Rose Bowl bid went to the Buckeyes because the Wolverines had been to Pasadena more recently. On the first day of the new decade, Jimmy Hague kicked a 17-yard field goal with less than 2 minutes remaining to give the Buckeyes a 17-14 win over California.
The 1950s began with another war, this one in South Korea. Dwight Eisenhower was elected president, and the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the concept of separate but equal, under which public schools were segregated. The massive interstate highway system was planned. The Barbie doll was introduced, and it was the decade of the New York Yankees, who won 8 pennants and 6 world championships under Casey Stengel. The merger of the All-America Football Conference and the National Football League was more like a surrender. Only 3 teams from the AAC, Cleveland, Baltimore, and San Francisco, went into the NFL.
In 1950, the Browns and New York Giants tied for the Eastern Division Championship with 10-2 records. But Cleveland won a playoff game, putting the Browns into the championship game in their first season. Their opponent, the same Los Angeles Rams who had played for the same championship as the Cleveland Rams only 5 years earlier. With 28 seconds left, Lou Groza's field goal gave Cleveland a 30-28 victory. Paul Brown's team won the NFL championship in its first season and started a 6-year string of appearances in the NFL title game. In 1954, the Browns faced the Lions, and Cleveland turned 6 interceptions and 3 fumbles into a 56-10 rout. Paul Brown called it his greatest club. The following year, Otto Graham came out of a brief retirement and led the Browns to their 6th straight championship game. In his finale, Cleveland rammed Los Angeles 38-14, giving the Browns back-to-back titles. Graham then retired for good. In a 10-year career, he led his team to the championship game each season, a feat unmatched by any other quarterback. On January 24th, 1950, Cleveland's Joey Maxim won the World Light Heavyweight Boxing title, battering Freddie Mills into submission in round 10. He'd remained champion for nearly 3 years. From 1951 through 53, the Indians under Al Lopez wound up second in the American League pennant race. But in 1954, the Tribe finally put it all together, winning a record 111 games to dethrone the Yankees after 5 years at the top. In the World Series, Cleveland faced the New York Giants. In Game 1 at the Polo Grounds, the Indians had a chance to take the lead. The powerful Vic Wertz drove the ball into the deepest part of center field, but Willie Mays caught up to the drive, 460 feet from home plate. The Giants swept the series in 4 straight. The 50s also saw Ohio State continue its dominance of collegiate swimming. The Buckeyes won the national title 5 times during the decade. 2 of OSU's swimmers, Ford Kono and Yoshi Oyakawa, won gold medals in the 1952 Helsinki Olympics. Harrison Dillard was back in the 52 Olympics, and this time he won his specialty, the 110-meter high hurdles. Dillard and teammate Jack Davis were both clocked in 13.7 seconds. But in another photo finish, Dillard was awarded the gold. He won another gold as a member of the 4x100 relay team. Mal Whitfield, the former Ohio State star, repeated as the gold medalist in the 800-meter run and captured another gold as a member of the 4x400 relay team. Another Ohio State performer, Glenn Davis of Barberton, won 2 gold medals in the 1956 Melbourne Olympics. He smashed the Olympic record by 7 seconds to lead a USA sweep in the 400-meter hurdles and grabbed another gold with the 4x400 relay team that also set a new Olympic record. Another hero in 1956 Olympic competition was Hayes Allen Jenkins of Akron, who capped a tremendous figure skating career with a gold medal in the Winter Games just 1 month before his 23rd birthday. No Ohioan had more impact on the world of sports than Tony Trabert of Cincinnati. After winning the 1951 NCAA singles title as a 20-year-old, he went on to dominate men's tennis. Trabert won 5 Grand Slam titles between 1953 and 55, was a member of 4 Davis Cup teams, and was number 1 in the world in 1953 and 1955. Back in Columbus, one of the toughest jobs in college football went to Wayne Woodrow Hayes, who had been head coach at his alma mater Denison for 3 years and Miami University and Oxford for 2. But in 1951, he hit the big time. Hayes was a taskmaster with a penchant for military precision. One of the players who did not benefit from Woody's system was Vic Janowitz of Elyria, the 1950 Heisman Trophy winner. Under Hayes, Janowitz didn't make first-team All-American in 1951 as a senior.
There was a big change in college football in 1954. The rule makers mandated that the game revert back to single platoon football, which meant the players had to go both ways. With hometown boy Howard Hopalong Cassidy at halfback, the Buckeyes rolled over 9 straight regular season opponents to win the Big Ten title and their 3rd trip to the Rose Bowl.
Cassidy, one of the greatest breakaway runners in Ohio history, scored 6 touchdowns, averaged 6 yards a carry, led the team in receiving, and intercepted 3 passes to earn consensus All-American honors. In the 1955 Rose Bowl, Cassidy and the Buckeyes dominated the USC Trojans 20-7. Their 10th straight victory clinched Ohio State's 2nd national championship. The following season, Cassidy had another brilliant year in which he played more than 53 minutes a game, averaged nearly 6 yards a carry, and scored 14 touchdowns. The Downtown Athletic Club awarded him the Heisman, OSU's 2nd in 6 years. In 1956, Hayes' Buckeyes set a new Big Ten record for consecutive wins when they picked up number 16 and 17, but Iowa beat Ohio State for the conference title. In 1957, OSU was named national champion by UPI, and Hayes won College Coach of the Year honors, but it was Woody's last hurrah of the 50s. The Cleveland Browns had a strange thing happen to them in 1956, their first losing season. But the downturn didn't last long thanks to a big, young fullback from Syracuse University named James Nathaniel Brown. To keep Jim Brown from signing with the Canadian Football League, the Paul Brown offered him the highest amount the club had ever paid a rookie, $12,000 a year, plus a $3,000 bonus. In the ninth game of the 1957 season against the LA Rams, the 220-pound fullback turned in the greatest running exhibition in league history, with 31 carries for 237 yards and 4 touchdowns. Brown led the league in rushing and was voted Rookie of the Year. With a year of experience under his belt, Jim Brown was even better in 1958. In 12 games, he ran for 1,527 yards and scored 18 touchdowns, a new NFL record. His performance helped Cleveland to a regular season tie with the New York Giants at season's end. The Browns visited Yankee Stadium for a playoff with the Giants, but New York held pro football's best runner to just 18 yards and won the game 10-0. After the near miss in '58, the Browns settled into the uncommon role of also-rans. About the only thing their fans had to cheer about was Jim Brown.
The 1960s. John F. Kennedy was elected president and assassinated 3 years later. 2 Ohio astronauts made history. John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth, and Neil Armstrong the first to walk on the moon. Both Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King were murdered in 1968, and America elected 2 more presidents, Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon. In 1960, the biggest story of the new decade was played out in the Cow Palace in San Francisco, site of the NCAA basketball championship.
The final matchup featured defending national champion California against Ohio State's Young Bucks. The Bears were favored, but the Buckeyes scored the most lopsided victory in the 21-year history of the NCAA Finals, 75-55. The next season, Cincinnati's Bearcats won a date in the finals with the 27-0 Buckeyes. Cincy brought a 21-game winning streak into the title game. Tied at 61 in regulation, the game went into overtime. Tom Thacker, Cincinnati's Giants center, hit 2 foul shots early in the OT, putting his team ahead for good. The Bearcats won 70-65. The 1962 final at Freedom Hall in Louisville matched the same 2 Buckeye State rivals. Ohio State was ranked #1 by both wire services, but Cincinnati, which had lost only 14 games in 5 years, forced the Buckeyes to play their slowdown game. Paul Hogue scored 22, while Thacker netted 21 to cement a 71-59 Bearcat victory. In the summer of 1960, sprinter Wilma Rudolph of Cleveland was one of the stars of the Olympic Games in Rome, winning the 100 and 200-meter events. She captured a 3rd gold as a member of the 4x100-meter relay team. Another standout team was the 1960 Ohio University 11. They were a perfect 10-0 and won the National Small College Championship. 2 battery mates at Kent State University went on to fame as major leaguers. Pitcher Steve Stone captured the Cy Young Award as a member of the 1980 Baltimore Orioles. Thurman Munson became captain of the New York Yankees and an all-star catcher, only to die in a plane crash at the height of his career. The Dayton Flyers had a great decade on the basketball floor, winning the 1962 National Invitational Tournament and emerging as a potent force in the late 60s. After several NCAA appearances, the Flyers won the NIT again in 1968. In 1962, a 22-year-old, Jack Nicklaus, stunned the world of golf by winning the U.S. Open. It was the start of an amazing decade of play in which the son of a Columbus drugstore operator would win a total of 7 major titles, and the best was yet to come. After a 21-year lapse, the Cincinnati Reds were back in the World Series in 1961. They had an outstanding lineup featuring future Hall of Famer Frank Robinson. But their World Series opponent had Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, who had broken Babe Ruth's home run record with 61. Mantle only played in 2 games, but it didn't matter. The Yankees won the series in 5 games. That same year, an Ohio-bred colt named Carryback went to the post in the Kentucky Derby, even though he was not a blue blood among the thoroughbreds. With Johnny Sellers in the saddle, Carryback was 4th going into the stretch, but flew by 3 colts to win by 3/4 of a length. Carryback also won the Preakness, but his Triple Crown run came to an end in the Belmont Stakes. Popular Brown Colt retired in 1963 as one of racing's all-time great money winners. Woody Hayes and the Buckeyes football team returned to prominence in 1961. After an opening game tie with Texas Christian, they sprinted to 8 wins in a row and a Big Ten title. The Football Writers Association named them national champions. But in a very controversial move, the the University Faculty Council voted to decline the Rose Bowl bid, and second-place Minnesota went to Pasadena instead of the Buckeyes. The Browns got a new owner in 1961 when 35-year-old Art Modell, a New York advertising and television executive, bought the franchise for $4 million. For that kind of money, he wanted to be a hands-on owner. But Paul Brown didn't think much of that, nor did he appreciate that Modell had become friendly with a number of the players. Some of those players told Modell that playing for Brown was intolerable. On January 7, 1963, Modell summoned Brown to his office at the stadium and fired him with 6 years left on his contract. Brown's longtime aide, Blanton Collier, was named head coach. With 2 games left in the '63 season, the Browns were tied with New York for the Eastern Conference lead, but Cleveland faded and the title went to the Giants. With few exceptions, the group Collier took to camp in 1964 was the same as the one that had folded in '63. Cleveland led by a game and a half with 2 remaining, and things looked good when they faced the Cardinals, winners of 4 straight. But St. Louis won, cutting the Browns' lead to a half game and sending the race down to the last weekend. On Saturday, December 14, 1964, the Browns turned in one of their all-time clutch performances against New York. That day, Cleveland quarterback Frank Ryan arrived as a big-time field general, completing 12 of 13 passes for 4 touchdowns. The Browns won 52-20, setting the stage for a championship battle against the powerful Baltimore Colts. The Browns were given little chance against the 12-2 Colts, but it turned out to be Cleveland's day. In one of the major upsets in NFL history, the Browns not only beat the Colts, they shut them out 27-0. It was the last time the Cleveland Browns were on top of the football world. Jim Brown retired after the next season, leaving behind a pile of records. 12,312 yards rushing, 7 seasons with 1,000 or more rushing yards, 106 touchdowns on the ground, and 58 games at 100 or more yards. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1971. As for Paul Brown, he may have been down, but he wasn't out. In 1968, the legend returned to pro football with a new team in a new city, the Cincinnati Bengals. In 1970, Cincinnati lost 6 of its first 7 games, then won 7 in a row to win the AFC Central crown in just their 3rd season. No other expansion team did so well as quickly as the '70 Bengals. After winning the Big Ten in 1961, Ohio State slipped into a 6-year span of being an also-ran. But Woody turned things around, and a perfect 10-0 record and national title in 1968 erased the bad memories. The Rose Bowl was a classic matchup between the 9-0 Buckeyes and the 9-0-1 Southern Cal Trojans, led by O.J. Simpson. It was number 2 against number 1. In the 3rd quarter, a 25-yard field goal by Jim Roman broke the deadlock, and a Rex Kern pass to Leo Hayden made it 20-10 Buckeyes. Woody and company cruised to the 27-16 victory.
The 1970s. At the beginning, America's population topped 203 million, and 4 unarmed students were killed by National Guardsmen at Kent State University. Before the 70s ended, the war in Vietnam was over, President Nixon resigned in the aftermath of Watergate, Elvis Presley was dead, and the Iranians were holding 52 American hostages. In Ohio sports, the decade belonged to the Cincinnati Reds, the Ohio State Buckeyes, the University of Toledo, and Moeller High. While the Browns and Indians were buried in mediocrity, the Golden Bear kept roaring.
Jack Nicklaus continued to rewrite golf history, adding the 1972 and 75 Masters, the 1972 U.S. Open, 3 PGA and 2 British Open titles to the 7 major professional championships he had won in the 60s. Early in the decade, the Toledo Rockets authored the 2nd longest win streak in modern college football history, 35 straight, second only to Oklahoma's 47 between 1953 and 57. After Toledo, Miami was the next powerhouse from the Mid-American Conference. In a span covering the 1973, 74, and 75 seasons, the Redskins from Oxford won 32, lost 1, and tied 1. In 3 straight Tangerine Bowl appearances, they defeated Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. You knew Ohio State's Archie Griffin was something special when in the 2nd game of the 1972 season, the 5'10", 185-pound freshman tailback played only 17 minutes, but rolled up 239 yards rushing to smash the Buckeyes' single-game mark. OSU lost only once during Griffin's freshman season, but were buried 42-17 by Southern Cal in the Rose Bowl game. A year later, the Bucs returned the favor, devastating the Trojans 42-21 in a return engagement at Pasadena. Griffin rolled up 149 yards for his 11th straight game over 100. In Griffin's junior year, 1974, he led the nation in rushing with 1,620 yards, extended his 100 yards a game streak, and scored 12 touchdowns to win Ohio State's 4th Heisman Trophy. The Michigan-Ohio State game in 1975, as usual, had the Big Ten championship riding on the outcome. State had a 9-game winning streak. Griffin had a 31-game string of 100-yard games, and the teams were tied. Michigan held Archie to 46 yards, but the Buckeyes won 12-10. UCLA beat the Bucs in the Rose Bowl, but Griffin won a second consecutive Heisman Trophy to stand alone in college football history. A coaching legend hung up his cleats in 1975. In 25 years of pro football, Paul Brown, who long before had been named to the Hall of Fame, amassed 361 victories and won nearly 73% of his games. In baseball, some bigger-than-life characters like Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, Tony Perez, and Pete Rose became legends in their own right as the Cincinnati Reds took center stage in the major leagues. From 1970 through 79, the Reds won more games and more titles than any other team. They captured 6 NL West titles and 4 pennants. In 1970, the year they left Old Crosley Field and moved to Riverfront Stadium, the Reds won 102 games and the pennant, but lost to Baltimore in the World Series. 2 years later, they fell to the powerful Oakland A's in the Fall Classic. But catcher Johnny Bench was MVP of the National League in 1970 and 72. In 1973, Pete Rose was MVP and led the league in batting for the 3rd time as the Reds won the Western Division, but they lost to the New York Mets in the playoffs. Finally, in 1975 and 76, the Big Red Machine put it all together. In those 2 seasons, Joe Morgan became only the 2nd National Leaguer to win the MVP in consecutive years. In 75, Sparky Anderson's team won 108 games, swept Pittsburgh in the championship series, and faced the Boston Red Sox in the World Series. In one of the greatest fall classics ever played, the Reds won it in 7 games, their first world title since 1940. It was much easier in the 76 series as the Reds swept the Yankees in 4 straight. No one was prouder of their effort than the skipper.
I think they showed what real professionalism was. I mean, here you had people that were so talented, probably the best at their position in a lot of cases, and yet they didn't act that way. They didn't treat things that way. They treated baseball the way baseball was supposed to be treated. They understood the game, they knew how to play the game, and they were very professional on and off the field.
The Cleveland Indians didn't make much history on the field, but made plenty off of it in 1975, when Frank Robinson was named the first black manager in Major League history. Former Reds teammate Vada Pinson talked about the impact of Robinson's breakthrough.
For black people, or any minority, and we know he could do the job, but it's just one of those things that we kept saying the first, you know. It's tough when you're talking about pigmentation. It's going to be a problem. You know, I'm going to get fired because I'm black or white or whatever. It shouldn't be that way. It's the knowledge, and he had the knowledge, but I'll be very honest, he didn't have too much of a team.
For sheer excitement in the 1970s, nothing topped the miracle at Richfield, the saga of the young Cleveland Cavaliers. After 5 years as the NBA's laughingstock, the 1976 team not only made the playoffs for the first time, they captured the Central Division title. Then they beat the Washington Bullets in the first round of the playoffs before losing in the second round to the eventual champs, the Boston Celtics, who won their 2nd championship in 3 years. Another of the big sports stories of the 1970s began in 1969 and continued through 1980. It was the Cincinnati Moeller story. In that 12-year span under coach Jerry Faust, Moeller lost only 7 games. 5 of Faust's last 6 teams were undefeated and won the Ohio AAA championship. 4 were awarded the mythical National High School Championship. And finally, no story in the decade had more drama and human interest than Dave Waddle's odyssey in the 1972 Munich Olympics. A little-known runner wearing a cap, a product of Bowling Green, became famous overnight. Taking advantage of a slow pace, he surged from last place in the final 200 meters to win a gold medal in a photo finish of the 800 meters.
The 1980s, Ronald Reagan won 2 presidential elections by landslides, the first over Jimmy Carter. Iran released the hostages. The Space Shuttle Challenger exploded, killing 7 astronauts. And the Iron Curtain began crumbling. There were many great moments, but no truly dominant teams. If one team came close, it was the Cincinnati Bengals, who made it to the Super Bowl twice in the decade.
Super Bowl 16 started out as a rout for Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers. But the Bengals fought back, getting to within 6 points. But Montana and company held on for a 26-14 win. The same teams met again in Super Bowl 23. But with 34 seconds left, Montana iced the Bengals with a 10-yard scoring pass to John Taylor for a 2016 victory. As for that football squad from Columbus, they shared the 1981 Big Ten crown with Iowa, then beat Navy in the Liberty Bowl 31-28. The Buckeyes were outright Big Ten champs in 1984, but lost to USC in the Rose Bowl 2017. In 1986, Ohio State lost a hard-fought 26-24 decision to Michigan, forcing the Bucs to share the Big Ten crown. They went on to beat Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl 28-12. On March 12, 1987, all of Ohio mourned as Woody Hayes passed away.
I loved Woody. I loved him. I played for him for 2 years and hated him because he was the meanest, nastiest, toughest coach I ever saw. I coached with him for 6 years and he was exasperating. The demands that he made on the guys that worked for him and so forth were immense. I competed against him for 10 years. An intense rivalry. At that time, our relationship was probably not more than a few sentences a year, and most of the time just prior to the game.
9 months later, Earl Bruce, Woody's successor, was fired by OSU President Edward Jennings just 6 days before the Michigan game. In Bruce's final game, he led the Buckeyes to a 23-20 victory over the Wolverines. Bruce was then replaced by John Cooper, who became State's 21st head football coach. The Cleveland Browns had an up-and-down decade. They started on an upbeat note in 1980, winning the AFC Central with an 11-5 mark. But by 1989, they were 3-time losers in the AFC title game, and each loss was to Denver. In NCAA Division III football, the 1980s belonged in part to the Dayton Flyers. They opened the decade with a 63-0 triumph over Ithaca for the championship, then lost title games in 1981 and 87, before recapturing the crown with a 17-7 victory over Union in 1989. But football was only part of the Ohio sports story in the 1980s. On May 8, 1982, Ray Boom Boom Mancini of Youngstown captured the World Lightweight Boxing Championship, demolishing Art Frias in Las Vegas in 2 minutes and 54 seconds. Then, in a title defense, Mancini KO'd Korean Duck-Koo Kim in 14 rounds. Kim never regained consciousness and later died. Mancini held the title until June of 1984, when he lost to Livingstone Bramble. That same year, Bowling Green State University reached the pinnacle of success in college hockey, winning the Division I championship. In Lake Placid, New York, Gino Cavallini scored a goal at 7-11 of the fourth overtime, giving the Falcons the title over Minnesota Duluth in the longest NCAA tournament game in history. On September 11, 1985, Pete Rose of the Reds put to rest one of baseball's most enduring records, Ty Cobb's mark for number of hits, which stood for nearly 60 years. Rose slashed a line single for hit number 4,192 of his 23-year career. Rose was eventually banished from baseball for life for gambling and was later imprisoned for tax evasion. His exclusion from the game put a hold on his trip to Cooperstown. Sparky Anderson, Rose's manager for years, talked about Rose the player.
Everything was an obsession with me. To get 200 hits was an obsession. To score 100 runs was an obsession. Hit 300 was an obsession. I loved it. People used to say, he's selfish. He goes for himself. I said, you give me 25 people as selfish as Pete Rose, and I'll give you the greatest baseball teams you've ever seen. You must be selfish as a player. You must have goals and goals that you want to reach. To reach those goals, you must drive yourself. And everything Pete earned, he drove himself.
Another sports legend proved that age isn't necessarily the determining factor in the quest for victory. In 1986, at the age of 46, Jack Nicklaus won his 6th Masters title. It gave the Golden Bear the seemingly insurmountable total of 18 majors in his spectacular career. And speaking of spectacular runs, from 1980 through 1991, the Kenyan College Lords won 12 consecutive NCAA Division III men's swimming championships. What's more, Coach Jim Steen also tutors the Lady Lords, who have won 8 Division III women's crowns. The men's team has captured 38 straight conference titles, and the women have won 15 straight. Finally, the 1980s came to a close with Cleveland St. Ignatius High School capturing USA Today's National High School Football Championship. They followed in the footsteps of such great Ohio powers as Cincinnati Moeller and Massillon.
The 1990s are just beginning, and Ohio already has its first great moments. As far as surprises go, the Cincinnati Reds' sweep over the Oakland A's in the 1990 World Series is right up there.
Another huge surprise came in boxing when Buster Douglas of Columbus shocked the world in early 1990, knocking out undefeated heavyweight champ Mike Tyson in Tokyo, Japan. Before the year was out, Buster was on his back at the hands of Evander Holyfield, the new champ. In 1991, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and the rest of the football world mourned the death of Paul Brown. He was a giant of the game who successfully coached at every level in his home state.
There you have them, the great moments in Ohio sports history. But which moments were the greatest and which achievement was the best? We asked Ohio sports writers and broadcasters to answer those questions. Let's see how they compare with your choices. Number 10, the Ohio State Buckeyes surprised the basketball world and win the NCAA basketball championship in 1960. Number 9, the Woody Hayes era at Ohio State, including the 1954 and 1968 national championship teams. Number 8, the Big Red Machine sweeps the Yankees in the 1976 World Series for the Reds' 2nd straight World Championship. Number 7, the Cleveland Browns, coached by Paul Brown, win the NFL title in their first year in the league, defeating the Los Angeles Rams in 1950. Number 6, Johnny Vandermeer pitches back-to-back no-hitters against the Boston Braves and the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1938. Number 5, Jack Nicklaus captures his 6th Masters title at age 46, bringing his all-time record number of major titles to 18. Number 4, the underdog Reds score another 4-game sweep, this one against the Oakland A's in the 1990 World Series. Number 3, Archie Griffin becomes the first collegiate to rush for 5,000 yards and win back-to-back Heisman trophies. Number 2, Pete Rose breaks Ty Cobb's Major League hit record in 1985. And finally, number 1, Jesse Owens of Cleveland electrifies the world by winning 4 gold medals in the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. Jesse Owens, in a class by himself. We hope you enjoyed great moments in Ohio sports. I'm Len Dawson.